guess what? They came back to bite me in the ass a little bit. But moving on, but still connected to the story in a way. The same night as this is going to be Canelo versus Kovalev. Again, probably the biggest name in boxing other than Floyd Mayweather, maybe Manny Pacquiao at this point. Now, and obviously, you're more of an MMA guy. I'm more of a boxing guy, so I think this is why this is going to be a good discussion. And we're
MMA is better.
we're going to get into maybe the fight itself in a second, but first off, the competition of the night, the ratings battle, DAZN and Canelo and Kovalev, or ESPN Plus pay-per-view with Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. Who's going to get more buzz that night?
I think it's going to be Diaz and Masvidal, because typically with a Canelo fight, you can always count on the Hispanic market. You can always count on them to be paying attention, but that's going to be divided. You have an all Hispanic main event for the UFC, and two guys, one who for years now has been a cult favorite, who just in the past 3 years has risen to some sort of pop culture notoriety. And then Masvidal, who for years has labored away and been a hardcore darling, but now I think he's also on a reality show or something too, is becoming a mainstream name with the devastating knockouts that he just had in his last two fights. I mean, you were there at the Honda Center with me for UFC 241, and
for
the
Diaz
crowd
Pettis, yeah.
went nuts.
Well, let's be honest.
Went nuts for Masvidal just being in the crowd.
No, that too. But I mean, let's be honest. The Nate Diaz army, as he calls it, right? The Diaz army. That is such a giant contingent of Hispanic combat sports fans that, I didn't really think about it from that prism, right, or through that prism of Canelo is a Hispanic Mexican draw, a traditional draw for the Mexican market, of course. But this is probably the first time the UFC can probably legitimately compete with that market, or at least the Mexican-American side of that market, right?
Right.
And if we're talking purely the DAZN U.S. numbers versus ESPN Plus U.S. pay-per-view numbers, it's going to be close. I would assume that maybe Canelo and Kovalev, from just the pure subscriber base that DAZN have, might have more overall viewers. But if, let's say, Diaz Masvidal does over 500,000 buys, it doesn't fucking matter. Those are pay-per-view buys compared to a view on a subscription app. Right. You know what I mean? Like the monetary, just the revenue gain from a Diaz Masvidal fight is going to be completely different, perhaps. And I think, if I'm predicting it, will be, because I think that is going to be a successful pay-per-view, even though it's on only ESPN Plus. And again, the battle for the Mexican-American market in combat sports is going to be a battle. And the only thing that might hurt it is that, honestly, Diaz Masvidal is not on the West Coast, where the Mexican-American market is, right? They're in New York. That helps her for the overall U.S. exposure, because that's the media capital of the U.S. and the world. But if you're trying to get, or I should say, galvanize the Mexican-American base, it helps to be in the Mexican-American market, literally, like location-wise. And Canelo is going to be, to an extent, of course.
Yeah, because unless you're planning on being in the arena, it really wouldn't matter, because unless the TV times change.
No, not necessarily. I think there's a legitimate aspect just of ground support in terms of marketing. Like if you're in LA, if you're in Vegas, if you're in these spots, San Diego, and there's going to be more marketing for a Canelo fight because Canelo's fighting in Vegas, and therefore they're wanting you to buy a ticket and drive to Vegas, versus the UFC. They're not expecting to actually have a lot of marketing within LA, within San Diego, within Vegas, because the fight's in MSG, New York. They're not really expecting you to buy a plane ticket and travel there. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that might affect it, is that maybe DAZN and Golden Boy are more focused on like real ground support marketing, billboards, bus stop ads, all that stuff.
The marketing machine of ESPN powered by Disney.
Oh, of course. No.
And that's like another level of attention. That's a whole nother level of attention. And also, we're talking about I mean, I do get your point. I mean, we're in the LA area, but we've seen plenty of billboards and advertisements for all sorts of UFC fights that don't occur in the West. You know, I've seen
True.
plenty. I know you have as
No,
well.
true.
Granted, we roll in certain circles, so maybe that's maybe that's why.
No, you're absolutely right. But I would say it's gonna be interesting to see that because we are in LA, right? This is gonna be the market that they probably battle for the most, even though both fights aren't in this market. Because traditionally speaking, Nate Diaz is a huge LA draw, and Canelo Alvarez is a huge Mexican draw, and LA has a ginormous Mexican population. So you're going to have to battle for the real estate of the Mexican American market, and LA is going to be one of the hot spots for it. It just is, even though both fights aren't in that location. But at least one of them is close enough to where if you're in LA, you can drive and go see the fight. Right. But I largely agree with you that I think Diaz Masvidal is going to be the bigger pop of the night in terms of attention from the media, from the casual media audience, and just the public, right? I think Diaz Masvidal is going to just pop more than Canelo Kovalev. It just will.